Now, there's no doubt that Dune is one of the most well-realized fictional worlds out there. It consists of hundreds of worlds and societies, each with their own culture and agenda. However, this isn't the kind of world where aliens pop out of distant planets to take over the Earth. Instead, this is the kind of society where humans have transcended their biological limitations to become something far greater. This has given rise to various different races of humans, but honestly, it's kind of difficult to keep track of them all, even for seasoned fans. But don't worry, because we're here to help you out. In this marvelous video, we'll be listing all the different races inhabiting the Dune universe so that you don't miss out on a single detail. However, before we move into the juicy bits, please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe buttons. It might just be a small click for you, but to us it means an awful lot. Now, without further ado, let's begin.
Now drive it into your throat.
Number 1. The Bene Gesserit. These mysterious nuns are undoubtedly one of the most intriguing aspects of Dune's universe. Not only are they extremely influential on a political level, they also possess strange powers that are far beyond any mere mortal. Thus, it does make sense to put these powerful women first on our list. The Bene Gesserit are essentially an ancient organization that operates all over the known universe through a veil of mysticism and espionage. The group consists of only women, functioning as nuns, spies, scientists, and theologians, all of whom are dedicated to the singular cause of facilitating the ascension of the human race through the arrival of the messianic figure known as the Kwisatz Haderach. It's believed that these nuns are the descendants of the priestesses of Jauf, who came into power during the turbulent period following the Butlerian Jihad. The Bene Gesserit have gained their power by silently working for millennia in the background of imperial politics. Their breeding program allows them to place their agents in the courts of imperial houses as concubines. This allowed them to selectively breed individuals from different great houses in order to bring forth the Kwisatz Haderach. Through years of research and training, the Bene Gesserit have attained numerous physical and mental powers that make them seem almost superhuman. These nuns have the ability to control every single nerve and muscle in their body down to the individual fibers. Through continuous practice in the supreme arts of prana and bindu, they have attained complete control of their internal organic chemistry, which allows them to control their aging blood temperature, heart rate, and even level of consciousness. This makes them extremely adept at surviving even the harshest of climates and allows them to withstand extreme hunger and thirst. Even though the Sisterhood rarely engages in direct physical conflict, they have also mastered a special martial art known as the Weirding Way, which makes them extremely proficient at hand-to-hand combat. And don't forget the voice, which allows them to control other people merely through oral commands. Yeah, we've got to agree that these nuns are genuinely overpowered.
Reload!
Number 2. Fremen. The Fremen of Arrakis are probably the most well-known race in all of Dune. Not only do they play a very integral part in the main storyline, but they also reside on Arrakis, which is basically the only source of spice melange in the known universe. Not much is known about the Fremen prior to their arrival on Arrakis, but many scholars consider them to be the descendants of the famous Zenuni wanderers, a persecuted group that once undertook one of the greatest migrations in human history. Despite their frugal existence on the sparse desert planet, the Fremen are actually quite proud of their heritage and cultural identity. The brutal environment of Arrakis has taught this race of humans to survive even with the barest minimum of resources, especially water. They are also known for their combat skills, which they were forced to develop after centuries of continuous persecution. Owing to this, the Fremen are often seen as some of the toughest warriors in the entire universe, capable of taking on even the dreaded Sardar. The Fremen are known to live in loosely organized patriarchal collectives known as Sietches. Each Sietch is led by a knave, who is usually the greatest warrior in the tribe. These Sietches can usually be found among the rocky formations protruding out of the sand dunes on Arrakis. One of the most unique elements of Fremen culture is their reverence for water. On the dry, barren sands of Arrakis, even a single drop is considered to be priceless, and in order to conserve this valuable resource, the Fremen have come up with complex, full-body still suits. These filtration systems allow the Fremen to prevent their body moisture from escaping in the form of perspiration. They even wear nose plugs to collect the water escaping from their body while breathing. The Fremen rule states that one's water belongs to the entire tribe. Therefore, whenever a Fremen dies or falls in battle, their body is rended down into water instead of being buried or cremated. The Fremen also place a great deal of importance on valor, and most Fremen disagreements are negotiated with a duel to the death, also known as Amtal. It must be clear by now that Fremen are a fiercely religious subculture that almost borders on the point of superstition. Their religion is organized around the prophesied return of a figure known as the Muad'Dib, and the roots of their faith are the same as those laid out by Malmeth Sari. The Fremen are known to borrow some of their religious values from other faiths, like Hymn to Water, which was taken from the Orange Catholic liturgical manual as a call for the rain clouds. The Fremen have adapted their Zenuni faith to the desert environment, as they believe that the sandworm, or the Shai Halud, is the true physical manifestation of their god. And, well, given the size of those worms, the Fremen might genuinely be onto something there. Number 3. Sardar. These ferocious warriors are probably the most formidable fighting force the world's ever seen. At the beginning of the Dune saga, the Sardar stand tall as the elite army of the Padishah Emperor, renowned for their ruthlessness and almost fanatical zeal for the Emperor. To become a Sardar, a child has to go through some rather disturbing stuff. The recruits are raised in an extremely harsh environment that kills most soldiers before the age of 11. The ones that survive are provided with extremely intense training in swordsmanship and espionage. This is also where they're brainwashed to instill within the recruits an intense religious fervor for their imperial house. The combat prowess of Sardar were renowned throughout the Old Imperium, as they were integral to maintaining the Emperor's command over the universe. It's said that their swordsmanship was on the level of a Ginaz 10th level master, while their skill at espionage could give even the Bene Gesserit a run for their money. At their peak, each Sardar could easily take on 10 standard Landsraad conscripts. It's believed that the Sardakar's exceptional combat skills were a direct result of their harsh upbringing on the planet Seleucia Secundus, which also serves as the prison planet for House Corino. Though the Sardar were famously considered to be unbeatable for many centuries, they eventually suffered a devastating defeat at the hands of the Fremen during Paul's ascension to the Golden Lion throne. Though their fall was pretty steep, the Sardar are still remembered as one of the most bloodthirsty races ever seen in the entire known universe.
3 guild navigators, a total of 1.46 million 62 solari.
Number 4. Mentats. Most Dune aficionados are aware of the fact that supercomputers were banned in this universe after the terrible violence of the Butlerian Jihad, during which the thinking machines nearly took over. Thus, a rule was made to prevent the creation of such machines in the future, but this presented its own set of problems. I mean, it's pretty difficult for a futuristic society to function without the use of computers, isn't it? Well, this is where the Mentats come in. These mental giants were trained in specific skills to replace the computers and are basically humanoid calculators capable of remembering and processing huge amounts of data in the blink of an eye. The first human to display high-level cognitive thinking and computer-like calculation skills was a man called Gilbertus Albans, who eventually became the founder of the Order of the Mentats. These human computers soon became commonplace all throughout the universe, and it's actually pretty rare for a great house not to have a Mentat of their own. Most Mentats began to serve under the great houses as political advisors and strategists due to their knack for organizing vast amounts of data and drawing insights that any normal human would easily overlook. Some of the more skilled Mentats, like Thufir Hawat, could also fit into military roles, but only after undergoing special training. A Mentat can only be trained through extensive mental conditioning and requires a certain degree of innate mental ability to actually be successful. Their exceptional cognitive abilities and memory make them perfect for supralogical hypothesizing and strategizing, which are essential for any effective ruler. Mentats spend years trying to cultivate their naive mind, which is a supralogical mind that exists without preconception or prejudice. This allows them to easily extract logical patterns and use these patterns to deliver useful conclusions about any problem. The Mentat skills are limited to an extremely small number of people, which makes this one of the most coveted jobs in the whole universe. Though most Mentats are bound by moral and ethical concerns while strategizing and planning, there are also twisted Mentats that can operate outside any ethical framework. Due to this, they can come up with increasingly twisted plans to fulfill their master's wishes. They are, without a doubt, one of the most integral factions in Dune society. Number 5. Guild Navigators. Just like the Mentats, these pharmaceutically enhanced humans rose to power after the Butlerian Jihad to compensate for the lack of technology. The lack of thinking machines made intergalactic travel at light speed pretty impossible, as no normal human could steer a ship through the fold space without disastrous results. Thus, steersmen were created by feeding carefully chosen human beings vast amounts of spice in a microgravity habitat, which awakened their latent prescience. All guild navigators are spice addicts who have to constantly consume melange to maintain their prescience. These beings usually reside within large anti-gravity tanks filled with large concentrations of orange spice gas. This level of exposure to the drug has caused their body to mutate and elongate over time. The books describe the navigators as humanoid creatures with tiny mouths and flap noses. They have giant faces with pulsing temples, while their hands and feet have become webbed like aquatic birds. Navigators are the cornerstone of Dune society, as no trade or travel can happen without their special guidance. The Navigators function under the control of the mysterious Spacing Guild, which is one of the most influential organizations in the known universe. Number 6. Bene Tleilax. The Bene Tleilax are definitely the most secretive group on this list, as these beings have gained an incredible mastery over genetic engineering. Despite this, their customs and ethics are considered to be pretty repulsive by the other cultures of the known universe. However, this repulsion just serves to further enhance their innate desire to subjugate and dominate all their rivals. Most thinkers and scholars consider the Tleilaxu to be a form of necessary evil that spawned from Zenuni ecumenism sometime before Muad'Dib's jihad. Though they were initially a religious sect merging Zenuni and Zensufi theologies, they eventually evolved into the secretive guild of genetic manipulators we know and love today. Their way of life is essentially isolationist and is dominated by a strict hierarchy with an overwhelming religious zeal. For centuries, the Tleilaxu have focused their efforts on genetics and are known to be firm believers in the pursuit of spiritual elevation through physical refinement. Their culture is highly suggestive of male chauvinism and is considered to be the counter to the highly matriarchal Bene Gesserit. There are various classes of Tleilaxu depending on the genetic modifications they've undergone, namely Tleilaxu Masters, Axel Tanks, and Face Dancers. Though they originate from the Zenuni, they don't really place special importance on the sandworm and are considered to be monotheistic. Due to the fact that there are no female Tleilaxu, it is likely that most of the women were used as subjects for their genetic experimentation. Number 7. Swordmasters of Ginaz. The Swordmasters of Ginaz are seen as one of the most respected warrior groups in the known universe. They've attained this status through centuries of practice in swordsmanship, and the Ginaz school of swordsmanship is still believed to be the greatest form of combat in Dune. Thus, most great houses maintain their own swordmasters and use them as commanders, teachers, and personal guards. Due to the incredible proficiency of Ginaz swordmasters, they're considered to be the only fighters that are even superior to the terrifying Sardar. The most well-known swordmaster from this disciple has to be Duncan Idaho, who served under the banner of House Atreides. Under Idaho's leadership, the Atreides were actually able to train a small battalion capable of taking on Sardar in battle. Though the swordmasters are proficient in almost all forms of combat, it is their skill with knives and swords that makes them famous. Needless to say, it's better not to engage this warrior if you want to live. Number 8. Zenuni Wanderers. Zenuni is a belief system that merges the values of Sunni Islam and Zen Buddhism. It was extremely popular, especially amongst enslaved and disenfranchised individuals. Due to continuous persecution by the Imperial raiders, the Zenuni were forced away from their homes and began a great journey to find a planet that could grant complete freedom. Thus, they came to be known as Zenuni Wanderers, and most scholars consider this race to be the descendants of Muslims from Earth. According to historical accounts like the Shah Nama, the Zenuni Wanderers travel across numerous planets like Nilotic al-Urumba, Poitrin, Solusa Secundus, and Bela Tejus before finally arriving on Arrakis, where they evolved into the Fremen. Much of Zenuni history has been lost to time, but some information has still survived through oral tradition. However, the Zenuni migration is considered to be far more complicated than these traditional narratives portray. Despite this, the Zenuni are still seen as one of the most important historical groups in Dune. Number 9. Honored Matres. This powerful and extremely violent group of nuns emerged from deep space around 1500 years after the end of the God Emperor's reign. During the turbulent period following Leto II's death, the Bene Gesserit sent out numerous exploratory parties and colonization teams from their own ranks. However, many of these parties never returned and were considered to be lost. However, we later learned that these groups not only survived but also flourished in the deep reaches of space. The experiences of these groups during the scattering triggered numerous changes in their beliefs, customs, and objectives, causing them to split from the Bene Gesserit. Though many of the ideologies followed by the Bene Gesserit still remained a part of the Matres' identity, they also incorporated outside customs and philosophies that made them extremely distinct from their predecessors. They also differed from the Bene Gesserit in their methods of attaining power and sought to supersede the status quo by whatever means necessary. Their strategies were far more aggressive and often led to the enslavement and destruction of their enemies. These women also developed a form of sexual enslavement by turning sexual intercourse into a potent narcotic that could be used to control powerful individuals, especially men. This allowed the Matres to infiltrate numerous houses and organizations with ease, as they could easily make the ones in power subservient to them. The Matres' violent methods often put them against the Bene Gesserit, and the two groups would eventually face off against each other in the War of the Sisterhoods. Number 10. Cogators. During the days of the Old Empire, Cogator was the title bestowed upon the revered philosophers who agreed to transfer their brains into special preservation canisters. This allowed them to continue their ruminations without being bothered by sensory stimuli that are provided by a living body. These canisters could then be attached to highly advanced robotic bodies through thoughtrodes, making the Cogators almost immortal in some ways. Most Cogators would usually occupy highly secluded locations like the City of Introspection or the ice planet of Hesra in order to avoid any contact with humans. Due to this, even thinking machines didn't treat them with the same disdain they had for humans and even tolerated their presence in the synchronized worlds. The Cogators, especially one known as Eklo, played a key role in the rise of Titans. The Cogators were best known for their advanced interpretations of the universe and played a key role as neutral mediators when seeking an audience with the thinking machines. Number 11. Sorceresses of Rossack. This human culture originated from the planet of Rossack sometime after the Butlerian Jihad. The term sorceress usually refers to female inhabitants from the planet who have developed various mental and telekinetic powers. This group is famous for being the predecessors to the Bene Gesserit and gained incredible political influence after centuries of planning and scheming. The powers of the sorceresses usually stemmed from the extremely toxic environment on Rossack, which usually wrought havoc on the early colonizers. Due to the strange biology of the planet, most newborn infants on Rossack developed terrible physical and mental disabilities that would never be cured. However, some infants were born without these disabilities, and for reasons that are far too complicated to understand, the female survivors usually developed supernatural telekinetic powers. By the start of the Butlerian Jihad, these women had already mastered their psychic abilities to the point that they could take on Simex. The group was known to be an extremely chauvinistic society that saw males and non-native women as inferior to them. Over the years, the sorceresses began their efforts to expand and strengthen their own world via detailed genetic codes that could be used to choose suitable male partners. These women often avoided genetic wildcards in order to ensure the survival of their own kind. The sorceresses were strongly against the use of thinking machines and were staunchly aligned with the League of Nobles. Their aggressive support of stringent military action would eventually trigger an age-old conflict with the powerful artificially intelligent entity known as Omnius. Interestingly, we would later learn that the sorceresses themselves used a secret installation of computers to store their vast database of genetic heritage. The Omnius Scourge would eventually arrive on Rossack and cause widespread destruction to the biological jungles of the planet, which led to the widespread death of Rossack society, even managing to eliminate some very powerful sorceresses. Number 12. Simex. Simex are a class of highly advanced thinking machine that once lived as humans but were converted to cyborgs at some point in time. They usually had a robotic body controlled via legacy human brains and lived about 10 millennia before the establishment of the Spacing Guild. The human brains were usually stored in canisters filled with electrofluid, and with consistent maintenance, the brain could survive for thousands of years by switching bodies. Simex were usually divided into two categories, Titan and Neo-Simex. Titans were the original 20 individuals who conquered the Old Empire, while Neo-Simex referred to everyone who came afterwards. Though they were humans themselves at one point in time, most Simex consider humans to be significantly inferior to them. They would often refer to humans in derogatory terms and were extremely proud of the way that they had managed to shed their mortality. The Simex's greatest strength was undoubtedly their ability to detach from their robotic bodies, but somehow this also proved to be their greatest weakness, as they would be pretty vulnerable to numerous forms of manipulation when away from their body. Due to this, most new Simex were completely subservient to their masters, be it Omnius or one of the Titans. Number 13. Suboids. Suboids is a term that was popular on the planet of Ix and usually referred to its poorer classes. These underprivileged inhabitants of Ix had human bodies but would not exhibit any normal human traits, and the leader of Ix, House Vernius, used these creatures as human robots for heavy jobs. They often worked on the deepest underground levels of the planet and were used as labor in the creation of trans-spatial ships known as highliners that would be sold to the Spacing Guild. Due to their limited mental capacity, they possessed almost no emotion or feeling and were seen as incapable of original thought or creativity. The Tleilaxu, who were being led by Hidar Fen Ajidaka, managed to take advantage of the Suboids' desire not to violate the rule against thinking machines by stirring up a rebellion amongst their ranks. The Suboid rebellion was then backed by Tleilaxu saboteurs, and the conflict would eventually escalate into a full-scale invasion of Ix by the Tleilax, who were being supported by Sardar themselves. This rebellion proved that the Suboids were indeed capable of organizing themselves and were not above asking for more than they had. Number 14. Fibians. This genetically engineered race of humans closely resembled fish and were brought as captives by honored matres. They were used by the matres on the ocean world of Buzel, where they were used as overseers for the Bene Gesserit slaves contained on the planet. They could also be used to retrieve stones from the unreachable depths of the sea by prying open Collister mussels. The Fibians are extremely well suited to being underwater and can breathe easily both in water and on land. They're extremely talented divers and can dive much deeper than even the most accomplished human divers with ease. "16. Face Dancers. The renowned face dancers from Tleilaxu might just be one of the most feared assassins in the known universe. These genetically engineered hermaphrodites are born from Axel Tanks and are not able to procreate on their own. What makes the face dancers so special is their ability to change both their personality and form to mimic other individuals. This makes them extremely popular for entertainment, espionage, and assassins, as it's nearly impossible for normal humans to detect these imposters. The face dancers have far more muscle and nerve linkages in their body and have also mastered the discipline of Prana Bindu, which allows them special insight into their victim's psyche. They can mimic not just appearance but also the voice, personality, and behavioral traits of almost all adult humans. They received their name from the fact that their facial features would appear to dance whenever their flesh and bones reconfigured. In their default state, these dancers appear to be small with chinless faces, pug noses, and beady black eyes. Their hair usually appears to be white and has the texture of bristles on the brush. These beings also lack any form of self-identity and function more like hive creatures than individuals. Due to this, they have no real ethical code and are driven solely by their instinct for self-preservation. However, it would be a mistake to see them as mindless drones, as they are also extremely shrewd and cunning creatures who will stop at nothing to fulfill their goals. The only people who can detect these imposters are the Bene Gesserit, but this is a pretty difficult task even for the formidable nuns. Over the years, another more powerful breed of face dancers came to light who were capable of absorbing their victims' memories through touch, making their transformations even more authentic. However, these dancers would often get stuck in the personality they were mimicking and would start to believe that they were real people, especially when impersonating someone for long periods of time. Number 17. Golas. The term Gola refers to an artificially created human engineered from the cells of an already dead individual. They are also born from the axolotl tanks and can be generated even from a single cell of the original being. To be considered a true Gola, the cells must be collected after the original human's death and should possess a death memory from which the original memories can be restored. Most Golas possess the memories of their source human thanks to a combination of conditioning and a variant of genetic memory. Initially, Golas could be distinguished using their metallic eyes, but this problem was eventually resolved in later versions. The Golas were initially developed to console people who were going through the loss of a loved one. However, this relief was pretty limited as these primitive Golas never retained any memories from their origins. However, when the Tleilaxu gave Muad'Dib a Gola of Duncan, Idaho, they conditioned the thing to assassinate Paul. But since Idaho held a deep love and loyalty for the Atreides, he found himself going against his conditioning, causing intense psychological trauma. The paradoxical nature of Idaho's feelings and his conditioning caused the original memories to emerge. Since then, a similar process has been used to reawaken the latent memories of Golas. The Golas would play an extremely important role throughout the history of the known universe following the reign of Paul Atreides. Number 18. Futars. These human-animal hybrids were created by the members of the Bene Tleilax after the scattering as a tool for hunting and destroying honored matres during the long and violent conflict between the two groups. The creatures were eventually brought into the known universe by members of the honored matres who kept them as pets. Though not completely mindless, these creatures only possessed subhuman levels of intelligence and could easily be controlled using intimidation, sex, and emotional imprinting. However, some Futars have actually found their way to urban areas on some planets where they've managed to build a life free from their handlers. Futars are pretty similar to the Fibians but are feline rather than aquatic. They can be used as either weapons or pets, depending on their handler's preference. Number 19. Tleilaxu Masters. The Tleilaxu Masters are an extremely elite class of Bene Tleilax who sit at the very top of the hierarchy on their homeworld of Tleilax. They are usually served by lesser beings like Golas and face dancers, and it is said that they are extremely childlike in their appearance. To become a master, face dancers must go through numerous serial lives as a Gola until they've made enough contributions to the Tleilaxu society. They would then be promoted to the status of a master after a process of purification. The masters can also attain the status of a Mashik once they are given permission to join the ruling council. The appearance of these 10 Mashiks is a bit different from that of the other masters, as they possess extremely sharp teeth and metallic skin that appears gray in color. Number 20. Axolotl Tanks. The axolotl tank is basically a tank created by the Bene Tleilax to reproduce a human being from the cells of a deceased human. These are also essential for the development of the face dancers and are central to a lot of Tleilax technology. These were engineered to replicate the effects of the spice melange, as this substance is highly controlled and only found on the desert planet of Arrakis. The Bene Gesserit have long held the suspicion that these tanks are basically the remnants of female Tleilaxu, and these doubts have mostly been confirmed over the years. Genetic information can be coded into these in order to produce individuals with specific skills and physical attributes. These tanks are often considered repulsive by other groups and cultures, but by the time the honored matres came around, the Bene Gesserit themselves adopted the tanks to create Golas. Number 21. Augmented Humans. The term augmented human refers to any human who's undergone changes at the hands of the rulers of the thinking machines, Omnis and Erasmus. The augmentations allow the humans to perform far beyond the limitations of a normal person, something that Erasmus was personally passionate about. Enhancing a human's abilities involves connecting tubes through the lobes of the brain to stimulate neural activity. It could also be used to increase the flow of blood and influence the circulatory system of the body. These augmented humans raised by Erasmus were absolutely loyal to the thinking machine and served as spies against the servants that Erasmus considered untrustworthy, such as the enhanced face dancers. marvelous verdict. Well, this long list of human races proves that Dune is one of the most well-detailed worlds out there. These races provide us with a glimpse of what the future of humanity could look like, and some of them are genuinely thought-provoking. But the question is, which is your favorite? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated on all our most marvelous content. Unfortunately, that's all we got for you this time, but we'll see you pretty soon. Until next time, take care and steer clear of sandworms. Goodbye.